Be honest. When you think about self-love, the first things that probably come to mind are things like spa days, vacations, or maybe posting a quote like, I am enough. And while all of that is nice, let's be real. If you are still letting people walk all over you, you are avoiding taking accountability, or running away from the things that you need to heal, that is not self-love. That is self-sabotage, my dear. Self-love is not about escaping your problems with self-care rituals. It is about facing your truth, making hard choices, and doing the inner work. You cannot heal what you keep running from. The thing is, most people don't do it because they don't know where to start. They don't do it because it's messy, because it's hard, because there is pain involved. But you've got to be willing to ask yourself, okay, so which pain do I want to deal with? The pain of growth and making hard decisions, or the pain of staying the same and getting the same result? I want you to get comfortable, grab a snack, grab a drink, and join me in this conversation about what real self-love truly is about. It's time to get out of your own way and start fully showing up for yourself beyond the face masks and the shopping sprees. It's time to tune in and shift with me. Welcome back to the On Some Real Shift podcast, where I have real conversations on what it takes to shift your mindset and uplevel your emotional and spiritual life. I'm your host, Vanessa. I'm a certified life coach, mindset transformation coach, NLP practitioner. I do sound and Reiki healing. And most importantly, I am a student of the university. Welcome back, my friends. You know, this topic has been heavy on my heart for quite some time because, like many topics on this channel, it is deeply, deeply personal to me. I have been on this journey of self-love for a very long time. There's no pinnacle to reach. There's no final destination. This is a forever ebbing and flowing relationship that we have with ourselves when it comes to self-love. I'll be the first one to tell you, as much self-love and self-respect as I have cultivated for myself over the years, I'm still a human, and there are times where I get impatient and exhausted, and my self-love goes in a little bit of a discount, but I'm the one who ends up paying for it every single time. So I'm not just talking to you in this episode, I'm talking to myself because this conversation will forever be relevant. I used to think that self-love was just about putting myself in this cushy little bubble of all things that feel good, right? And that if it didn't feel good, then it must not be good. I didn't realize how much self-sabotage there was within that way of thinking. I didn't realize how much I was enabling unhealthy and poor behaviors. The reality is, if your version of self-love feels good 100% of the time, then you are doing it wrong. For instance, as somebody who has struggled with my weight and my body for like the last 20 years, I'd use things like food to treat myself. And I would use it whenever I would be stressed, or I had a long week, or I wanted to reward myself. I would tell myself that it was fine because I had a long day or I had earned it. However, I was really just justifying poor habits in the name of self-care because I was doing this often. And because I was doing it often, it was just a form of self-sabotage. I was just contributing to the weight problems that I was already having. Once I really understood that, I really had to shift my mindset and understand, okay, Vanessa, eating the healthier meals is for your benefit, even though you don't want to do it, even though it doesn't feel good in the moment. Long-term, it will, and it's for your highest good. Did I want to eat the salad and lean turkey? No. But in doing so, I was supporting my highest good. I was supporting my health goals. And over time and participating in these healthier habits, a byproduct of that is that I was building a stronger sense of self-love in ways that I don't necessarily want to, but I know I need to. The more I do it, the more of a badass I feel like. And in turn, the minimum of standards of my self-love go up. So it's a win-win. So ask yourself, what do your habits look like? Are they supportive of your highest self? Are they getting you closer to whatever it is that you are looking to reach, whatever goal you are looking to obtain or manifest? Or are you just kind of slapping a Band-Aid on a wound that needs a little bit more attention? Treating yourself is absolutely part of self-care. We do deserve fun things. We do deserve beautiful things. We deserve a break. We deserve a treat. But there's a difference in treating ourselves and habits. Habits are repeated behaviors or regular tendencies, whereas treating yourself is more infrequent. And you know the difference. The other part of self-love I had wrong for a long time is I kept looking at others outside of myself for my own happiness. I'm sure this is going to sound very cliche for a lot of people, but we have to be willing to give ourselves the love that we are seeking from other people. We have to, because if we can't, we are giving up our power. Think about it. Expecting somebody else to keep us happy is extremely unreliable, can be extremely turbulent, and quite frankly, is just not fair to anybody involved. We have to be able to take onus over our own lives. We have to learn how to regulate our own emotions. We have to learn how to navigate them, identify them. Otherwise, we're forever going to be at the mercy of somebody else for our mood. And that sounds miserable. And like I said, it's unfair. It is unfair to put that expectation on somebody else. They have their own life. I don't care how much that person says that they love you. They should be tending to their garden first in the same way that you should be tending to yours. Meaning, they have their own emotional and spiritual evolution that they should be worried about. They may be going through their own struggles at the time, their own growth. How unfair is it to expect them to carry the weight of managing your happiness? Not only is it not fair, but it leaves you powerless. You are essentially giving them the keys to how your day is going to go. That's scary to think about and not something that I'm willing to do. With that mentality, it is very easy to slip into like a victimhood mindset, right? Because you become a victim of life's circumstances because you're constantly being pulled by the reins of someone else's behavior rather than being responsible for managing your own inner world. Now, that does not mean that you're giving people a license to mistreat you, and if and when they do, that you just remain unmoved. We're all here as humans living the human experience, right? So we are here to experience the wide range of emotions that comes with it, and we should. But it is on you to manage those feelings and then decide how you're going to move forward depending on whatever it is that transpired. Our self-love has to outweigh the love that we have for others at all times. And that gets me to the next pillar of self-love, which is establishing and honoring your boundaries. I know we talked about this a little bit before in a previous episode, but let's get into it. As I've said before, boundaries are not a stop sign. They are a love letter to the people around us that let us know, hey, I want you in my life. So this is the plan. This is how you have to treat me. This is what I will and will not accept in order for you to be in my life. They are the rules of engagement. It's a huge act of love and self-love to set them and communicate. The second part to boundaries is the part that a lot of people messed up, which is we have to enforce our boundaries. If somebody is in violation of our boundaries, we don't get to just point the finger at them for violating them, re-invite them into our life, and then be angry at them when they decide to re-violate our boundaries. That's not how it works. If somebody repeatedly shows you that they are unable to operate within the parameters that you have set for yourself, within the boundaries that you have communicated, you have to stop expecting them to shift their behavior to fall within their boundaries because they have already shown you that they're not capable or not willing to do that. It is up to you to adjust your behavior. And usually that means removing yourself from that situation. That's where we get messed up. We get upset because people continue to violate our boundaries, failing to realize that we are the ones allowing them to do so. I'm going to say it again. We get upset because other people continue to violate our boundaries, failing to realize that we are the ones allowing them to do so. Honoring your boundaries is a huge act of self-love, and it's not always easy, especially when it involves somebody that you love and care about, especially when it's a family member or a friend or a partner. It's not easy to have to distance yourself or remove yourself from somebody that you care about because they are not able to show up in ways that you need them to, but it's necessary. Or maybe you don't completely remove yourself, but you at least adjust the ways in which you interact with them. Point is, if you are continuing to accept that lower treatment, you are setting yourself up to receive that treatment over and over again in various areas of your life because you are signaling to the universe that you think that this is the type of behavior that you are worthy of receiving. You're saying, this is the treatment that I think that I deserve. And I get it. It's hard to come to terms with, but like I said, it's on us. It's not on them. And this kind of rolls into the next phase of self-love that for me has been the biggest flex. This is my biggest self-love superpower, the one I'm most proud of because it touches every single area of my life. I'm talking every area. It has touched my job, my business, my friendships, my relationships, my family, my body, my health. And I'm talking about learning how to take accountability. Now, this one is hard, but has single-handedly been like the biggest superpower that I have acquired in my entire healing journey, my self-development journey, and I'll explain why. I mean, think about it. The more you're able to take a look at your life and say, here, I could have done this differently. I could have done things better. I could have responded in a better way. I could have been more respectful here. I could have been more loving. Oh, if I had done this, this would have been more supportive of my growth. Oh yeah, I could have been kinder here. Should have looked at it from this angle. You're doing a few things. You are being so self-loving, so self-reflective that you are able to temper your ego to a point to say, you know what? My personal growth is far more important than how uncomfortable this makes me feel right now. Because listen, at first it is hard to take a look at yourself and point out where you have room to grow, where you could have done better. Once you get into the habit of it, you realize how powerful it is. Being able to look at yourself in any situation, whether it is a friendship, whether it's a relationship, whether it's at work, a passion project, whatever it is, and identify ways where you could have moved better, where they would have been more beneficial is not a criticism. You are creating opportunities for growth for yourself. And I'm not going to pretend like it was something that I started doing overnight, because it's not. It was uncomfortable at first, but over time, it's given me almost like a freaking rush, because there isn't anything that anybody can say to me about me that I probably haven't already identified within myself. There isn't anything that anybody can say to me that's really going to shake me, because I love getting feedback. I love to see where my gaps are, because I love to improve. I love taking a look at myself. I love constructive feedback because I want to be better. I crave it. And the only way to get better in anything, in absolutely anything, is to examine where your gaps are. Your favorite athletes did not become elite by only focusing on their strengths. They became top tier because they found their gaps and honed in on them to get better. Your mind and spirit operates the same way. They're like muscles. They're malleable. It takes practice. It takes confidence. It's not easy, but once you become more comfortable doing it, it is such a powerful tool. Unfortunately, you really are just such a prisoner in a box if you're so fragile that you can't receive criticism from anybody, especially if it's like people that you love. If feedback shakes you anytime you receive it. And that in itself is not a criticism, but if it hits, I'm telling you, start working on it. Because once you're able to take feedback, then you're able to gain so much more control over your life. Until then, your growth is going to be very limited in probably every single area of your life, because it's always going to be someone else's fault as to why things are the way they are. And it's never going to be within your power. You know what I mean? That mentality leaves you powerless. And again, puts you in that victim mindset. Secondly, when you really learn to own your shit, you are removing the power from other people being able to point out things that you already know about yourself, or the sting that comes with receiving criticism, whether it's constructive or not, right? Because you're already in the habit of examining yourself for the purposes of growth. I'm not saying that when you learn how to take accountability, you magically become aware of every single area that you need to work on, but you do create a heightened sense of self-awareness, which is very, very powerful. You do become more receptive to other people's perspectives, which can become very beneficial. Sometimes people see things that we simply cannot see because of where we're sitting, because of our vantage point. And we are doing ourselves a huge disservice by not being receptive to someone else's insights because our egos are too fragile. A lot of people don't know how to take accountability because they get accountability confused with blame. Blame is really just looking to assign fault to a situation. It's just finger pointing, and it usually has a negative connotation to it, right? It says X is the reason for Y, and that's it. Whereas accountability is about taking ownership and responsibility with more of an emphasis for empowering growth moving forward. If you struggle with taking accountability, if it feels like a blame game, if you feel triggered when people give you feedback, or taking ownership, if receiving constructive feedback within your relationship or at work feels like a personal attack for you, and I encourage you to dig deeper, because it's stopping you from immense growth and probably creating distance in some of your interpersonal relationships. People have got to be able to give you constructive feedback in a respectful way without it being taken personally every single time. Otherwise, number one, change will never happen. And number two, they may be communicating a need that is never going to be addressed because you are incapable of receiving it, because all you can hear is criticism. And long term, that could be detrimental to that relationship. If you struggle with receiving criticism or feedback, I want you to ask yourself, were you constantly criticized as a kid? Or maybe there was this expectation for you to perform at a certain level at all times and you were reprimanded if you didn't. Whatever it is, I completely empathize with the trauma, but it is completely up to you to unpack that and heal that. Self-love is about choosing growth over comfort. And again, I feel like this sounds like a corny Instagram quote, but it's so, so true. I want you to think about that one thing in your life right now that you know needs to change. That one thing that you know that you have the power to change. It's been in the back of your mind, kind of nagging at you for a long, long time. You know what I'm talking about, that thing. I want you to think about it. Now ask yourself, why hasn't it changed? Like, really ask yourself the real reasons why you haven't changed it. What have you not been doing about it? What have you been doing about it? If one of your answers was to point your finger at something or somebody else, I want you to walk it back and ask yourself, what is one step that you can take towards changing that one thing? See, because changing that one thing is not up to the other person. It is up to you. Is your reason for not taking the steps because there's some level of discomfort involved? Is it going to be hard? Is it going to hurt? Maybe there's some financial implications that are going to be kind of challenging to navigate. The point is, the changes required are probably going to take much more than a push of a button. It's going to take effort. It's going to take work. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's probably not going to be fun. It's going to require some action and some discipline. By nature, as humans, we are hardwired to stay comfortable, to stay at status quo, in homeostasis homeostasis, as comfortable as possible, even if it's to our detriment. For example, that's why it's so hard for a lot of us to get out of these bad friendships or bad relationships, because our brain would much rather keep us in this familiar hell than an unfamiliar peace. This is where our sense of self-love has to kick in, and we have to cultivate a sense of discipline. This is where we have to start making the hard decisions in support for our highest self, for our highest good. That is one of the highest acts of self-love and self-respect. We have to be willing to put ourselves through temporary discomfort for this long-term peace, for this long-term gain. The thing is, most of us just aren't willing to do that. Most of us are so short-sighted that we are just looking at what is right in front of us. We don't want to take that next uncomfortable step, not realizing the step after that is the one that we've been waiting for. I've referenced it before, but I remember being in that raggedy ass relationship and knowing for so long that I needed to get out, but I stayed stuck because I wasn't willing to put myself in that discomfort of the immediate pain that it takes to leave a relationship. Because listen, we don't talk about it enough, but there is grief in ending even the most toxic of relationships. And I kept wanting to put that pain off. But what I wasn't realizing at the time is the more I was putting off that pain, the more I was putting off my joy, the more I was putting off my peace, the more I was postponing meeting the person that is actually for me. Same thing with food. Every time I would reach for the French fries instead of cooking the healthier meal, right? Because the fries were easier, because they were tastier. They were right there. I was just using an excuse of preference and convenience over what was really best for me long term. And the only person suffering those consequences was me. It's a sick little psychological trick that we put ourselves through, right? Thinking that we are staying safe and comfortable and in control when we are remaining the same. But all we're doing is compounding the problems that we already have and postponing the joy that is waiting for us. We are the ones getting in our own way because we're not willing to sacrifice a little bit in the moment for the long term. If you just take a moment and step back and realize that the hard choices are actually the decisions and supports of your highest vibrations, and understand that growth very rarely happens when you're comfortable, then maybe you'd be more inclined to make the hard choices more often. Self-love is in the way that you talk to yourself, your inner monologue. Even when you're not proud of yourself, there are ways that you can talk to yourself without cutting yourself down. You can take accountability, for instance, without calling yourself names and without guilt tripping yourself. You don't benefit from that. We have to be able to extend ourselves the same grace and forgiveness that we extend to others. I always use this example with my clients, but would you talk to your friends the same way that you talk to yourself? If the answer is no, then ask yourself why. Why are you speaking to yourself that way? That inner voice, the way that you speak to yourself, the names that you call yourself matter. The conversations that we have with ourselves are the single most important conversations that we will ever have with anybody ever. It is by far the most powerful voice you will ever listen to. So how you speak to yourself matters. It's why we have to make sure that it's loving. Self-love is in the promises that you make and keep to yourself. Remember earlier how I said we have to stop looking to other people for our happiness? This kind of relates. I want you to think about a time that somebody broke a promise to you, and I want you to think about how it made you feel. Depending on the promise, it probably made you feel sad, upset, angry, maybe even unloved, unimportant, forgotten, right? Now, I want you to ask yourself, why don't you have that same energy when you break a promise that you've made to yourself? Probably because you're not taking yourself as seriously as you say you expect others to, which means you got it backwards. You can't possibly expect people to treat you with a certain level of love that you aren't willing to extend to yourself. Self-love is saying no. Just no. No is a complete sentence. We're often taught that self-love or even saying no is selfish, and it's not. Sacrificing your own well-being to make somebody else happy is self-abandonment, and we're no longer operating that way. The more we continue to abandon ourselves for the sake of others, the closer we get to burnout. And I have a whole episode on that coming out soon. Burnout is absolutely avoidable, and you guessed it, it starts with us. The last part I'll touch on is self-love is in the bubble baths. It is in the vacations. It is in the shopping sprees and the face masks and the nail appointments and all of the things. It's in the treats, all of it. Listen, I'm planning a vacation right now. Caring for ourselves, our body and our spirit with these tangible acts, tangible rituals is absolutely a part of the process. Like I said, we are souls placed on this earth having the human experience. And that's part of it. But we have to make sure that we've got the stuff on the inside, right? So that we can enjoy the external, Because if we don't, trips, these nail appointments, these massages are just a Band-Aid. And then we don't allow ourselves to experience life from the seat of true self-love. And that's when it gets really, truly freeing and beautiful. When you really learn to love yourself holistically, you're no longer shackled by shitty vibes and experiences or thoughts or people because you've learned to move in ways that limit those interactions. When you do have to experience them, you learn not to internalize them. You learn how to move through your feelings and move in ways that keeps your peace at the forefront. You love yourself so much that you know that you deserve a certain level of treatment. So you no longer entertain low vibrational experiences, no matter what form they come in. We really don't realize how much we stop ourselves from when we don't fully love ourselves, when we are operating from a low tank of self-love. You don't realize how different your view of the world can be until you truly cultivate a true sense of self-love holistically, like I talked about in this video, that is true and unwavering. And I know I talked a lot in this video, but I also feel like I only scratched the surface. But I want to leave y'all with a challenge. I want you to pick one way that you can show yourself true self-love this week and drop it in the comments below. And if this episode hit home for you, I want you to share it with somebody else that needs to hear it. I want to keep having these conversations and create a space where we can come together and help each other shift our mindsets, because we really are only limited by what we have up here. My goal is for everybody to lead an emotionally and spiritually resilient life. Last thing, I'll ask for you to please like, share, comment, and subscribe. It really helps me. I really appreciate your time, and I will catch you in the next episode. Peace.